Piccolo has always been one of the most skilled martial artists in the history of the Dragon Ball franchise and has given us a number of exciting and memorable fights during his time in the series. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to go back and talk about some of these great fights? So on this video, I present my 5 favorite, what I think are the 5 best Piccolo fights in history.
This is Lord Beerus, and unless you want your planet destroyed, subscribe to Geekdom 101. It's even better than pudding.
What are Piccolo's 5 most captivating, most exciting, and most entertaining fights in all of Dragon Ball? Well, on this video, we're going to discuss it, and I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite Piccolo fights in the series, and that counts for Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and Dragon Ball GT. All 4 series, including the movies. And I definitely want to know in the comments if you agree with this list, and if you don't agree, what would you swap around, and what would you list as your top 5 favorite Piccolo fights or fights with Piccolo in them in Dragon Ball in the entire franchise. So this list is my favorites, but I'm not alone on this video. Joining me to talk about my 5 favorite Piccolo fights and give his 2 cents, please welcome the community's biggest fan of the turban-wearing Namekian, Quaman.
Alrighty guys, it is Quaman here today, and anytime a Piccolo discussion arises, I will be the first to answer it.
Let's talk about the greatness of Piccolo, because Piccolo's always given us tons of entertaining fights. Piccolo versus Cell, Piccolo in the movies against the cooler armored guys, Piccolo against Shen in the 23rd tournament, otherwise known as Hero in the dub, but that's not on my list. Those are just honorable mentions. The number 5 entry on the list is from the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, the World Tournament, Piccolo versus Krillin. These guys have never really had a rematch after this, and I thought it was really captivating how Toriyama wrote Piccolo to go against Goku's best friend. And if you remember at the time, even though Krillin sat out the entire Piccolo arc with Piccolo Sr. because he was killed by Tambourine, at this point in the series, Krillin was not the joke that he had become later on. He was still a pretty tough guy, and he became a very interesting challenge to Piccolo. And this is also the first time that we actually saw Krillin, well, the first time we saw anybody outside of Chaozu and Ten Shinhan use the flying technique. Krillin debuted it in this fight. What are your memories of this fight?
Obviously, this was very one-sided, especially on Piccolo's side, especially since he was using weighted clothing. But one of the interesting things about it is that the discovery of the Bukujutsu was a very interesting technique, because up until this point, only the members of the Crane School were really shown using this throughout the Dragon Ball series. So in terms of discovery, I definitely found that this fight was very interesting.
And it was very, very well booked, and it really showed Piccolo's and how strong Piccolo Jr. had become, and the fact that he was going to be more dangerous than his father. Now, number 4 on my list is from a movie. Piccolo versus Goku from Dragon Ball Z Movie 2, The World's Strongest. Now, I love this fight because it was a throwback to the Goku-Piccolo fight from the 23rd tournament. Piccolo had become zombified by Dr. Kochin and Dr. Weedo and became this zombie Piccolo, and Goku had to fight him. And I just love the scene where he's gonna attack Gohan, and Goku jumps next to him and fires a Kamehameha, deflecting Piccolo's ki blast. I really love this fight. Some of Minoru Maeda's best animation ever, and a real throwback to classic Goku and Piccolo rivalry moments that we've seen in the past.
Right, I actually found that fight really interesting, and even if you go back to the first Dragon Ball movie Geekdom in Dead Zone, there was like a really brief scene where you see Goku fighting against Piccolo there, and considering that this is like taking place right after the 23rd tournament, there's still animosity between both characters. But in the case of movie 2, Piccolo had already, obviously changed throughout the series, so I definitely like that throwback fight that was showing.
I loved it. It wasn't very long, but I thought it was very good. Now, number 3 on my list is a great Piccolo moment. Piccolo versus second form Frieza on Namek. Piccolo had just come back to life. He fused with Nail, and because he fused with Nail, Nail gave him some of the, I guess you can say, mental strategies that Piccolo used in this fight by already having fought Frieza and seeing some of the things that he was capable of. So during the fight, we have second form Frieza, who looks like the devil, who looks like a real dangerous dude. just having his way with Gohan, Krillin, and Vegeta. Then Piccolo shows up like an alpha and proceeds to stomp the crap out of Frieza and actually outspeed him. I think this fight is very underrated by Dragon Ball fans because I think it's well animated. It's fun to watch. There's big ki blasts. I really enjoy this fight, and every time I watch it, it does give me a lot of nostalgia from the Toonami era.
You know, interestingly enough, you know, as a Piccolo fan, you always kind of think in your head, you know, what if Piccolo had like wiped out Frieza, you know, at that very particular moment in time, because you think to yourself, he could probably have taken out Frieza in that form. And the way that Piccolo was fighting him with his weighted clothing on, and, you know, how he was just so confident in his own abilities right after he'd fused with Nail, I felt that that was a very cool thing to see, because seeing Piccolo so overconfident and, like, overjoyed by this new amount of power that he received was very interesting for the series, and especially to see that he's on the side of the good guys, so he's using this for all good deeds.
And I love how this is one of the earliest fights in Dragon Ball where we actually see the silent explosions, the ones that have where they break the sound barrier, that boom, 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 boom. This is one of the early times in the series that we see this, and it would, of course, become a staple of the series in the future. My next one, I think, this is a hard one to put at number 2 because of how utterly brutal it was and how utterly amazing it was. And if you haven't watched this fight in a long time, you need to go back and watch it. From Dragon Ball Z, Piccolo versus 17. First of all, the build-up. Piccolo's like, all right, you want to fight? Let's go over there to that island. Let's go scrap. This is after Piccolo had fused with Kami. They're duking it out. We're seeing several new techniques from both participants, and we're seeing Piccolo unleash hell. And the best thing, there's a couple of key moments here. When 17 does a reverse arm drag. Piccolo goes to take him down to judo arm drag. 17 reverses. We've never seen anything like that in Dragon Ball, and we see it there. Not to mention the amazing part where they're punching each other in the gut and they're hitting each other so hard that they're denting their spine, bro. Like it's obviously it's anime, so it's gonna be wacky, but these guys tore each other apart, man. I love this fight.
Right, and particularly I think one of the most awesome moments from this scene is, you know, when Piccolo first powers up and he was like overpowering 17, there's like a point where like Piccolo's like glowing in like this white bluish aura, and like 17's like just standing on like the like sitting on the ground just looking up to Piccolo like he's like being completely dominated by him. And to see like all of the techniques,
the Hell Zone grenade.
Hell Zone grenade is
yeah.
Right. And like the Hell Zone grenade and stuff, like I thought that was really cool too, because like, you know, Piccolo was completely outsmarting him. Like he's shooting all these blast 17 things, you know, that Piccolo was trying to shoot him at him, but Piccolo tricked him, and if it wasn't for that energy barrier, you know, 17 probably would have been nuked. So that was really interesting to see that, and how 17's android cybernetics kind of kept the fight on his side, as, you know, obviously his power doesn't really decline over time.
Not to mention that this is also the first time in the series where 17 not only is unleashing, he's going all out, but he's also being tested, because the last time we had seen the androids fight prior to this, not including Cell, is when they wiped the floor with the Z fighters. Now 17's actually sweating and he's actually having a hard time. That fusion with Kami put Piccolo at a new level.
Quick thing to add to that, I think it's also interesting to say that for Piccolo's case, you know, 17 just recently saw how, you know, Piccolo and Vegeta were like, and Trunks were like the strong guys of the group, and they were wiped out. But to see like in such a short amount of time that Piccolo had grown so much power was such a shock to everyone, and that's what made the fight more interesting.
It was so manly. Now, speaking of manly, number 1 is not only, in my opinion, the best fight in Piccolo's life that we've seen in Dragon Ball, but probably the best fight in the entire series. And if you have not seen this fight, dude, you're literally hurting yourself. You need to go, maybe not literally, you need to go watch this fight right now. Goku versus Piccolo from the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, the finale of the Dragon Ball anime, the end of that, the perfect arc. This freaking saga has the best build-up of any arc they've ever done, in my opinion. They built it up so perfectly. It's the big rematch between Goku and Piccolo, except this time it's the reincarnation of King Piccolo, and we see literally tons of techniques. They start the fight on the ground. Piccolo turns giant. Goku goes inside of him to grab the jug with Kami in it. They're literally destroying each other. They destroy the entire arena. There's techniques everywhere. There's Kamehamehas. And then the big finale with Goku learning the flying technique and the headbutt. This to me defines what a great Dragon Ball fight is. Every fight in Dragon Ball Z from after this moment pretty much tried to mirror this fight. Back and forth. One guy beats on the other guy. Vice versa. Piccolo turns giant. New technique. This is the definitive fight in Dragon Ball, and to this day, it's also one of the most violent, maybe the most violent, and to me, it stands out as just everything I ever wanted in this freaking show.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could talk about this, like Goku learning the Buku Jutsu, which completely changes the series, because after Goku and Krillin pretty much learned it, and then later on we would see all of the other Dragon Team Z fighters learning that technique and using it throughout the series. So that was very important. And on top of that, I feel like one thing this fight had over a lot of other Dragon Ball fights was the sense of tension. Because, in the scene where, like, Piccolo blasted an entire hole, like, through Goku's chest and, like, he's just stomping on him, like, you really felt like the moment was completely fucking hopeless. And, and on top of that, you see later on that, Goku still manages to come back from that. In a lot of Dragon Ball fights, it's very hard to mimic that level of tension where you really feel like the hero is going to die. Like, he has no possible way that he's going to get out of this. He's completely crippled, and yet Goku still found a way. And on top of that, after the fight is over, Kami's talking to him about, do you want to be the new Guardian? And, Kami pretty much wants Goku to take him out, but Goku understands that if he took Kami out, the whole Dragon Ball and all that stuff. So that was a really interesting twist that they brought at the end of that whole fight itself as a whole.
It was the perfect ending to the Dragon Ball anime because it wrapped everything up. Roshi tells Kami, if you didn't create these Dragon Balls, yes, there would be less problems on Earth, but these people would never become friends. And that, to me, wraps up the entire story of Dragon Ball. I know everybody loves Z, including me, but if you ended the story there, it's a perfect bookend. Of course, we had Goku's brother show up in the very next chapter in the manga and the anime, but I love that fight. It is to me, it's unquestionably the best fight in the series. However, if you don't agree, that's okay too. It's just my personal favorite. Let us know down below. Check out Quaman's Land, of course, with tons of Piccolo content and other Dragon Ball content. And you might see a similar video from him one of these days because he has his own list, I'm sure. So thank you for being here.
All right, no problem, bro. Anytime.
We'll talk to you down the road.